It's time again for the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast with Dr. John Dentico. The mission of our podcast is to provide 21st century leadership training for a talent-driven world. We help organizations implement strategies and practices designed to attract, hire, engage, and retain top talent while mitigating the effects of burnout. Our guests are experts in various fields of organizational dynamics, including, but not limited to, leadership, management, communication, and coaching. They bring a world of knowledge and solutions to our viewers and listeners. I am sincerely grateful for their participation and ideas. So let's dive in. And if you enjoy our podcast, please like, share, and subscribe. We genuinely appreciate your support. Hello again and welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Dr. John Dentico. With me today is Jevon Wooden. Jevon is a sought-after speaker, coach, podcast host, and author, specializing in emotionally intelligent leadership and business practices. A veteran, CEO, and expert in emotional intelligence, he empowers leaders to build high-performing teams, cultivate caring workplaces and cultures, and achieve sustainable business growth. Jevon's insights have been featured in Forbes and Entrepreneur Incorporated magazine. Let me make that change. I am very pleased to have him here with me today. Hello, Jevon. How are you?
I am doing well, Dr. Dentico. How are you?
You just call me John. Just call me John. I appreciate that.
I
tell
gotta
people
give you the credit.
I appreciate that. But I tell people the only time I use the title doctor is when I'm putting in proposals for speaking events and when I make dinner reservations.
I love it.
Get you a good table every time.
Anyway,
So let's jump in. Let's dive in, as I like to say. Jevon, you focus on the idea of an empathetic leader.
yes.
Can you define what you mean by an empathetic leader?
Absolutely. So when I speak about empathetic leaders, I'm talking about someone who feels and understands, right, who they're serving, right? Because as a leader, you're actually serving. They don't work for you, you work for them. I've always loved that quote. So an empathetic leader is able to feel that so they can provide the proper resources and proper support, because we know in the end, that's all about driving the business or our agenda forward. But an empathetic leader is not so focused on the goal that they forget about the people.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Let me ask you this question. Let's say a person approaches you, for example, and says, Jevon, I want to become an empathetic leader. I'm not really sure how to get there from here. Do you offer a guidance, if you will, a process, a set of practices that you would give them to help them make the necessary changes? That is to say, is there a plan or even a check sheet that you might offer people for becoming an empathetic leader?
Yes, there is a plan. So I like to guide them to the 5 whys. That's a framework that I've been using for years for various things, and it also applies to becoming a more empathetic leader, right? The first step is, why does that even matter? That's a question that we often forget. Okay, we have this goal of being an empathetic leader, but why does it matter? Why do you care about being an empathetic leader? That's the first question I would ask them. And then depending on the answer, right, because a lot of times it's surface level, I might ask them again to explain. The second step to that is identifying the yield. What levers can we pull to help them become an empathetic leader, which by proxy makes them a better leader, in my opinion. So what can we do? What resources do they already have? What resources do they need? Do they have a support system to assist them with this, etc.? So we're going to look at that. And then we figure out how we can make it easier. That's the third why. It's a boating term called YAR. When we think about boating, we want those sails to catch the wind. So how can we catch the wind for you, so to speak, in being a more empathetic leader? And there's some things we look at underneath that I'm happy to talk about further. And then the fourth why is yoga. Right? How do we make you flexible enough How do we make sure that you have contingencies built in for if you do slip up and you revert to being an unempathetic leader, right? What is the contingency plan built in to get the lessons learned from that? As we say in the military, the after action report. What do we look at? Because we're humans. You're not always going to be thinking about that person. Sometimes you're like, why the heck do they keep screwing up? And then you go and yell at them or do whatever you do. But that's not the end all be all. There's lessons to be learned from that. And that's okay. So, what do we do after that? And how do we make sure that you can sustain the empathy and still be an effective leader? Because oftentimes I've noticed that leaders think there's one or the other. They think that if I'm empathetic, then I'm weak, then no one's going to want to listen to me, etc. Well, that's just not true. And then the fifth why is the yearn. How do we get those people that you've identified as your support system? How do we get your employees? How do you get your customers evangelizing what you have done, supporting you through spreading the word, right? You, as a great leader, you typically don't have to say, I'm a great leader, right? And it's important that people spread the word because that helps you with retention, that helps you with hiring practices, that helps you with getting more customers and clients, more business, and helps you in so many different ways. That's how we're going to do that, those 5 steps, those 5 whys.
Very interesting. When I developed the lead sim simulation methodology that I've used, what came about was I found that it ran on 2 fuels. The first fuel was ambiguity. I wanted people to wrestle with ambiguity so that they had to collaborate. They had to, if you will, tear down the barriers to collaboration because no one knew what to do. We had to go you have to go figure it out. You have to struggle with it. I'm sure you've seen that many times in military training, and that kind of idea that you struggle with it, but then you find a way out of it if people are collaborating together. Absolutely. And the second one, oddly enough, is empathy. That the way to get people, and the original intent of the simulation was to tear down the barriers to collaboration. And I found, personally speaking, that let me just say, not the only way, but one of the more effective ways was to get people to walk in somebody else's shoes, to get people to, in effect, say, I get how they feel. I get what they're doing over there. So, in fact, I will tell you an interesting story. The other day I was talking to a previous podcast guest who told me that it worked in an organization, was counseling or doing some coaching in an organization, where people who had worked together for 12 years had never met one another, even though the information they had could help the other person. So the stovepipes, and of course I was like bowled over by this, thinking, we've solved this problem, haven't we? No, we haven't solved this problem. No. The stovepipes still exist. To me, it's a very interesting perspective. They play roles in it. And I have to be honest and say, Daniel Goleman published Emotional Intelligence 30 years ago. It's been a bestseller. It's got a lot of attention. But I have to be honest and say, I'm not so sure that the practices and the ideals have sunk into the level that people were hoping. And I'd love to get your reflection on that, your reaction to that. From what do you think? I would dare say there's more work to be done, obviously. But what have you seen in terms of the ideals of emotional intelligence soaking in, if you will, into organizations?
Absolutely. And I love the story you gave, John, about how people work together for 12 years. They don't even know who they're working with because you get so focused, again, on the goal and the outcomes, we forget about that person. So emotional intelligence, I would agree that there's a ton of work to be done. And I actually feel in some cases, in some instances, we're regressing. As we get the virtual environments and all that other stuff coming, it's becoming easier to not know that person. It's becoming easier to type a message or put it on the project management software that this task needs to get done, and I don't really have to talk to you. And before we get into this, I want people to understand that there's 4 quadrants when it comes to emotional intelligence, right? You have that self-management, right? You have the self-recognition, which is really knowing yourself, which a lot of us think we do, but there's a lot underneath that. And then you have the social or relationship aspects of that, the management and the recognition. So we may skew higher on one side than the other. A lot of the leaders that we know of today, they really struggle with that relationship piece because they really don't know that that self recognition part, that self understanding is lacking. They're like, I know I want this done, and I would do it this way, right? And this person is not doing it this way, and it's frustrating the heck out of me. And then I just yell at them, or I give them the pink slip, or I put them on an individual development plan, whatever the case may be. There's no questions being asked. People are no longer curious. They just want it done. So that curiosity comes from empathy, right? We will then say, okay, am I, as the leader, do I provide them with the proper resources? Am I conveying what needs to be done properly? Am I giving them the autonomy to perform it their way? Because we're all different in every way. We perform differently, we learn differently, we communicate differently, etc. So we need to understand that as leaders. And then from the social or relationship management component, am I checking in with them? Is there also a feedback system for them to let me know what's going on? Right? There's so many different pieces to that. So that's why I say we regress, because from the virtual world, we don't have to do a lot of those things. It's just like it's automatic. We'll Slack them or whatever tool you're using, and tell them like, hey, get this done, and that's it. We don't know if they're married. We don't know if they have families. We don't know why they wanted the position in the first place. We don't know what motivates them to get up every single day and come to work. We don't know any of this stuff because we're not asking. We're not having those meetings. We're not doing one-to-ones anymore. And if we do, that's the easiest meeting to get pushed back and thrown off the calendar. So there's so many different pieces in an organization that, quite frankly, is just making that emotional intelligence and empathy part just fall apart.
I agree. And I think, but here's the reality of it. And I know this hybrid, as far as I can see, the hybrid work environment is here to stay.
Absolutely.
Especially when you look at where I'm spending a lot of my time looking at the hiring and retaining good talent will not stay any longer in an organization that doesn't meet their, if you will, personal life balance requirements. They'll move on. And the positions are available because great talent will find great jobs. I think that's a truism. And we haven't even touched on the area of AI and the inflection point, if you will, of AI in all of this. So, what do you think? What do you think may be one way or two ways? Recognizing, of course, hybrid work is going to be with us. That the empathetic leader, or the empathy, if you will, can cross those boundaries, can be distributed in such a way to value and invite the hybrid worker.
Yes, and you said a word. Not, and I just for the record, I'm a fan of hybrid. I think that it really helps organizations, like you mentioned, the talent. It helps us to really help with that work life balance, so to speak, and make sure people can do what they need to do as a person. But what we really need to do is that word you just said, value. How do we convey that we value that person? And one of the easiest ways to do that is communication. If we are only asking someone or talking to someone when we need something, we've already lost that. There's no connection there, there's no rapport being built, none of that. So, as a leader, we have to ensure that we're displaying that. The first way is to model the empathy that you wish to spread throughout that organization. So part of that is asking people, how are they doing? How can I support you? Do you have what you need? And not just waiting for a survey, because I know organizations and listeners are going to say, yeah, we do that. I'm not talking about the survey that comes out. Okay. Doing it from person to person is what I'm referring to. And learning who you have on your team. You may have, you shouldn't have like more than 20 people as a leader directly under you. That's it. If you do, then might need to be some restructuring, because it's hard to do what you need to do per se as a direct reports. So you need to set up time to actually communicate with them. I venture to say on a one-to-one basis. It doesn't have to be every week, but you just want to have a point where you check in. In the military, we do that. We make sure no matter how many people we have in the squad that we have one-to-one time. It could be 15 minutes. No one's saying it has to be a whole hour or anything, but that check-in to give them voice, to show that you're listening to them, not so you can talk at them about the role, but ask them what they need, how they feel supported, all these different things. How's the family? How are you feeling on a personal level? Letting them know about the support that the organization has. Because some of the organizations, they have some great benefits. Let's just call it what it is, John, but people don't know that. Coaching, therapy, employee assistance programs, etc. Or making sure they're aware of that. All those things show that you value them. It shows that you're listening to them. It shows that they're not just a billet filled in the role. So that's one. The second thing to go across that and make empathy be spread throughout the organization is making sure your policies, your procedures, your standards, your guidelines actually reflect that empathy is a value of your company. Oftentimes we're like, we want you to perform this way. Nothing about that, your onboarding process said that. Nothing about how you're treating me says that, etc. So we want to make sure that from onboarding all the way up to those people that's been there for 10 years, they understand that this is something we care about, and the people that we're hiring should model that and should reflect that and should have that as one of their core values. Because if you don't hire the right people, no matter how many efforts you put in, it's going to, that one person can be a cancer to the entire idea of empathy. So we have to make sure we're also bringing in the proper folks that support this value. And then the third thing that I would say is from a leadership level, a leadership role. Oh, did you have something to say, John?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So from the third thing is from a leadership team perspective, we have to understand that empathy is not only just that person, understanding that person, but also controlling ourselves. So having that idea. So what we need to do with that is knowing that as a leader, we do not have all the answers. And I think that's one of the biggest keys of all of this is understanding that we need to listen to our people, get some ideas from them, make sure that there's a feedback process, make sure that we're rewarding people, recognition and rewards for being those people that are empathetic voices, taking actions to empathy, showing that in our CSR initiatives are all these different things we have, ESG, whatever we want to call it. Everything should reflect empathy in what we do.
I agree. I think there's other pieces to it, and I'll
Absolutely.
just come back at you. First of all, if you're listening to people, okay, if you're listening to people, then you have to act. The leader has to act. If someone says, listen, this is not right, or this is not wrong, or I haven't been able to get a hold of HR to talk about my benefits, for example, right? You march right down to HR and say, listen, one of my folks here is trying to get a hold of you. I need you to call them. I need you to call them and connect with them because they need to talk to you about this benefit. You act on it. All of a sudden people say, hey, that person cares about me. It's more than it's taking empathy to action, if you will. Taking empathy to action. It's so funny you talk about the values and living the values and different things like that. I'm working with a company right now on a strategic thinking process and program. So I asked them, I said, look, send me your mission statement. Let me see what you got. And they sent me 3 paragraphs. I said, no, that's not the mission statement. I need I need one sentence. I need one sentence that everybody galvanizes around, that everybody lives by. This in the military. We both, you have a mission. Our mission is to do X. Everything pales to insignificance if it doesn't have anything to do with the mission. If it doesn't have anything to do with why we're here and what we're trying to do. So that to me is very important. And you have to be crystal clear. It has to be simple and crystal clear to everyone. And you can't just put all these different kinds of containers around it. It just has to be simple and clean. And I think you ask people, you got a mission statement? Oh, yeah, it's over there on the wall. Yeah, there it is. You look at it every once in a while? No, I haven't looked at it in weeks. Yeah. And you sit back and say, that's not how it's supposed to be used. Because everybody focuses on that. Everybody knows what you're all about. Creating, my simple way of saying it is creating an environment where people come to do their best work every single day. If you take something just as simple as that, I'm not saying that should be anybody's particular mission statement per se, but if you take just that idea and say, this is what we're about. It's about creating an environment where people come to do their best work every day. Wow. That encompasses so much. It sweeps so much of it up. And it becomes the spirit, if you will, of how people operate. So I agree with you. I think that it's very important to lay all those things out and show you mean it. Show you mean it. You hear this phrase about belonging, right? You talk about belonging. And it goes like this. I want people to feel that they belong. And I say, no, I don't want them to feel they belong. I want them to know they belong. There's a big difference.
Big difference.
The model of leadership I started developing 30 years ago, has one fundamental principle. One. Simple. And that fundamental principle is contribution. It's all about contribution. Okay, here's a problem. Here it is in front of everybody. Anybody got any ideas? Anybody want to help? What do we think we can do with this? Because you never know where a good idea is going to come from. So I think for me, it's always been about putting that forward and saying, and then acting with them. Okay, figuring it out. Okay, what should we do first? How should we do first? And sometimes you'll have someone say, I think we should do this. And you go, that's a great idea. Yeah, maybe we should do that first. Charlie, Jane, why don't you lead that effort? You want to take that on and run with it and then come back in 3 or 4 days and tell us what you need from us so you can be successful. Investing someone in the outcome is such a powerful thing in many respects.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you this
question. Think about ownership. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Go with it.
Oftentimes you mentioned giving someone ownership of a solution and giving them the opportunity to voice. And that, I love that you said knowing versus feeling are two different things, John. And giving them ownership and opportunity to step into those roles, that's what a lot of people are looking for. Right? They don't want this mundane work that's not challenging them or not allowing them to step into more responsibilities and everything. Who wants that?
I agree. I talk about, my listeners and viewers are going to get so tired of me saying this. I know they are going to write me and say, shut the hell up. But the big three is, as I see it, is number one, people want to be involved with an organization whose values align with their own. Number two is they want to be involved in the decision-making processes. They want to matter. They want their work to matter. And number three is they crave training and learning that helps them develop professionally. And I believe, from my perspective, that has to be part of your messaging for new talent. Because I agree with you. That's what they're looking for. No one, after COVID had such a devastating effect on the mindsets of people that people have come to realize we just can't be in it for a paycheck. There's got to be more to this. I have to have some level, some sense of purpose about me and about my work. Wherever you may be, whatever you may do. If you're in that organization, and they have a sense of purpose, you're in. You're part of that. You can choose to go someplace else later on, maybe. And because maybe it doesn't fit you, fine, that's okay. But while you're there, you have to have the capability to participate and make a difference, really make a difference. And that's why my model of leadership is all about. I want you to be here to help. I want to help you make a difference. I want to help you become important in your own mind and in the mind of the organization. So I certainly thank you for those comments. Any reflection on that, by the way?
No, I think everything you said, I agree with 100%, and that make a difference. Meaningful work. That's what everyone wants to come in and do.
I agree. Meaning, the greatest motivation force on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. Give people an opportunity to gain meaning and watch them go. It's so powerful. I wanted to ask you about this because I'm very curious to ask this question. Talk to me, and I think you've covered a lot of it already. So I just want to maybe peel the onion back a little bit more, if that's okay with you. Okay?
Absolutely.
Talk to me about the relationship between empathetic leaders and their followers. I know you've covered part of that. What would you hope would be the expectation of the followers in this dynamic? Okay, let's put on their hats for a few seconds and talk about them. Do they, and here's the thing, and I'll explain in a minute, do they take on a new role? They're no longer followers. Are they now partners and collaborators more than they are, if you will, followers? Any comments?
Yeah, I would say that one, and I usually don't say this, but it depends on that person that is following, right? Everyone doesn't want to be a partner in it. Some people just would rather, they believe in your cause, they would rather go with whatever you say. Some people will have an opinion. They'd say, hey, how about we try this? How about we do this together? How can I help, etc. Those people can jump into the collaborator partner roles. But as a leader, aka an influencer, someone who they're following you for a reason, they want to partner with you or collaborate with you for a reason. So as the leader, if I can, I would want to find out why. Again, that why, that yardstick. Why does it matter for them to follow me or partner with me, collaborate with me? What about my message? What about my goals? What about my mission, as you mentioned, resonates with them? How does it tie in with their values? And then that way, they may not, some people don't want to just step in readily. So I may find something, a jewel within them to say, you know what, I think you'd be a great partner. I want you to have a sense of ownership on this thing. I don't want you to just take a step when I take a step. So that's where the leadership comes in from that perspective. And I'll leave it open for you to comment or question off of that.
No, I agree with you. I absolutely agree. There are some people who just want to come to work and put in the time,
Yeah.
and that's fine. They do a good job. That's fine. They're not going to take you. They're going to fill a slot, and that's all they want. They may be, and I've seen this happen. They may be very taken up with a hobby, for example.
Mm-hmm.
They may, whether it's fishing or flying radio controlled airplanes or those kinds of things, they work to feed their family and feed their hobby. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm good with that. You do a good job. Great. Got no problem. But you can't bring the organization forward on that. You can't move the organization forward and recreate products or services, for example. I don't think you can. You need those people who are now working with you, putting your heads together and trying to figure out, okay, this is what we have today. Our climate, if you will, is changing. Where are we going to go tomorrow? What can we do tomorrow that makes our organization stronger and helps you move up the organizational ladder, if you will? So I agree with you. It's important to understand where people are, where they sit, so to speak,
Yes.
and to respect that and say, okay, we're good with that. Let me ask you about, I'm going to ask you about this. How would you differentiate between the difference between leadership and management? How do you see them? It's the age old question. How do you see them? I see, I'll just, no, I won't say that. How do you see them?
Yeah. I've always liked I forgot who said it, the person who said managers focus on the processes and leaders focusing on the people. And I feel like that's the difference. So the manager, again, wants that outcome. They're like, hey, we have this thing to do. How are we going to do it? We're going to put all this stuff in place and these steps, these milestones, metrics, and all that other stuff. Great. We need that. Right? That's awesome. But the leader is going to look at the people to say, you know what? How can I ensure that you're best fit for this, whatever this mission is? How can I ensure that I support you best? How can I prepare you for success? How do we have contingencies just in case you're not feeling at your best? And then they'll look past the titles too, right? Because the leader understands they've gotten to know their people very well. They've taken time to do this. So the leader can say, yes, I know you're in this technical role or this project manager role, etc. But I want you to take the reins on this and lead it as the whatever, take that position. You are now the owner of this. Leaders can see that. And I think that is something that makes a great leader or a good leader great, to have that vision and that insight and that foresight, and then also be willing to calculate and say, you know what, this person, they're ready. Right? They're ready for this. I don't necessarily need, just because of my position, to be at this thing, at the head of this thing. I'm going to give it to this person. So I think that's the difference between the manager and the leader. The manager wants the thing done however it needs to get done based on the processes and the steps it's going to take, whereas the leader knows and looks at the people he has available and what their strengths are, and he's able to make sure that they are in the proper positions to succeed.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. My interpretation is a little different, and I look at both of them as outputs, processes and outputs. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Management looks for creating incremental change, small change, tweaks. And leadership to me is about transformational change. It's about big change.
I like that too.
We're orbiting around the same planets. And I think
Yeah.
that you have to really invite people into the process. Again, from the leadership perspective, invite people into the process, ask for contribution in order to create that movement, if you will, for transformational change. So I think we are in the same in the same orbit around the planets. We're just at a different spot. We're getting close to the end here, and I would like to ask you, I was thinking about this question to ask you, a little bit different than what I normally ask. And that is, imagine for a moment you get an opportunity to speak to a group of people, and you're going to offer them, and you've probably done some of this already, you're going to offer them 3 things for them to either do or think about in order to become a empathetic leader. What are the 3 things you would tell this audience of people, if you will? You can put your speaker hat on here.
Yes. So one would be get feedback. Get enact feedback. Right. I think that is very important to become a better leader, because we don't know everything and we're also people. So we tend to do things the way we think it should be done, right? When it may not be the best way. So listen to your people, get feedback. 2, I would say remain curious. Understand, and I said it earlier, that we don't know everything, and curiosity is also the key to unlocking more innovation and learning new things. So the moment we stop being curious is the moment that, even if we're still living, we actually die, because you're no longer learning or doing new things. And then the third thing I would say, if you want to be an empathetic leader, is do, right? Enact empathy. You mentioned it earlier, there has to be some action. So empathy is not just, it's a verb, right? Being empathetic. So we have to do things to make sure that we're being that. And in the 4th one, if I can add a bonus, John, I would say, remember that why is empathy important to you in the first place? And then when you do that, make sure it aligns with that why.
Great work. I will just tell you that I have had numerous conversations with previous guests about the importance, I'll use a different term here, of vulnerability, of a leader being vulnerable. To say, you know what? I messed that up. I really did a good job of messing that up too. And you know what? Okay, so I messed it up. Let's go fix it. Let's go figure out what we have to do to fix it. And it's on me. It's not on you, it's on me. And
Yes.
I think accepting the responsibility, it's something I learned, I'll tell you very honestly, in the military. I had to fight for my people, and I had to fight for my ideas, as you well know. And sometimes you have to be the screen. You have to be the screen from someone who wants to jump down the throats of the people that work for you.
Oh, yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Bringing back memories, John.
Yeah, you know, they want to jump. And you say, wait a minute, bring it here. This is where it belongs, right here. Leave them alone. That kind of thing. And you have to screen your people, take care of them, take care of your people, they'll take care of you. And
Yes.
I've always believed in that. I've never been run wrong on that. And so being vulnerable and saying, it was on me. Captain, Admiral, Major, it's on me, not on anybody else. And then I've always thought it brought out such a tremendous amount of loyalty from the people that worked with you to see that you're not going to let them take the fall for it. And I think there's a lot of it goes on today in companies. That's not my fault. It's not my problem. No, I didn't tell them to do that. You've seen this. You know, it's different. It's different when you stand up and do the right thing and fight for your people.
But yeah, so on that, I wholeheartedly agree that if you take care of your people, they will take care of you as a leader. And taking care of them, one of the best ways you can do that is what you were just talking about. Standing up for them, but also looking at their ideas. You don't have to go back and say, man, I just took it on the chin for y'all, right? You don't
No, you don't
have
have
to,
to do that.
right? Just that is a part of what you do, your role, right? As a leader, we uplift, we protect, and we support. And so I agree. I have really, this makes me think of a concept, and I talk about this often when I do these things. Jocko Willink, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he was a Navy SEAL, and he talks about this
Yep, I know.
principle of extreme ownership. And that's what this reminds me of. As a leader, how can I best, what is my part in it? When you said I screwed up, taking ownership, even if that person messed up, even if your subordinate happened to mess up, ask yourself, was what part did I play? Did I not communicate it well? Did I not check in with them enough? So you want to make sure that you take the concept of extreme ownership and apply it to everything as a leader. And it's also going to inform you on the best next move.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's so key. And every time that I would be honest, every time I stood up and took the hit, I say, I really messed that up. I had people gather around me, is one way of saying it. Hey, don't worry about it. It's all right. We're going to fix it, right? Yeah, let's figure out what we're going to do and fix it. Don't worry about it. It happens to everybody. So they came to my aid, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And when someone admitted it to me who was more senior to me, if you will, I came to their aid. I supported them. I said, what do you need? What can I do? We're in this. Let's go. That kind of a thing. And to support them and help them. So I absolutely agree. And extreme ownership is, I hope that too is sinking in along with a greater empathy in workplaces. But Jevon, I want to thank you so very much for being here today with me on the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. I appreciate your good words. Great job. And I look forward to communicating with you in the future. I wish you all the best in the future, all the successes. Thank you for your service.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, John. This has been a wonderful conversation. And thank you for giving me new insights and things to think about. It's been an honor to be on Throttle Up Leadership, and I wish you the best as well. Thank you so much for your kind words.
Thank you, sir. You have a good day.
You too.